And this is Alex from Swoosh English. Now, I get a lot of doctors and nurses coming to me saying when they look at the OET Speaking roleplay cards, sometimes they just don't know what to say. Okay, is this you? Let me know in the chat box below if this is you. Maybe they've come across a scenario that they're not familiar with. Maybe they've never come across this scenario before in their day-to-day role as a nurse or a doctor in a hospital. And they just think what happens, that fear comes over them in thinking when they're in the real examination, they spent all that money on the exam, and what happens if they get one of those horrible scenarios where they just don't know what to say? Maybe they don't understand a particular term. Maybe, most of you are working in non-native English speaking countries. Maybe you call it something completely different. Maybe in your hospital you use a really old-fashioned medical term for this scenario, and maybe they're using the standard English in the OET speaking examination, and you've just completely frozen and you're anxious, etc. The key is really to use that preparation time. You've got 2 to 3 minutes. So if you're not familiar with something, make sure you ask the person who is the interlocutor, who is the English teacher. That's the first thing I want to say. And I've been doing a lot of OET speaking role plays with our students on our OET program, our doctors and nurses. I did some last week actually, and guess how many people actually asked questions? They asked me questions in that 2 to 3 minute preparation time that you get. How many? 0. Nobody asked any questions whatsoever. I think they have this feeling of nervousness, thinking, or whether it's me or whether it's another interlocutor in the real exam, they're going to say, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know these things, you're not a professional, why should you be asking for help? And that is absolutely not the case. As part of the exam criteria, as part of the regulations, you are able to ask any questions that you want. So if the medical terms you're not familiar with, you absolutely can ask the interlocutor, what does this mean? How do you pronounce this? What's it really asking me to do? You can ask all these questions. So going back to the medical terminology in the examination, does it have to be absolutely accurate? Does it have to be, accurate to the point where the interlocutor is going to look at their medical journal afterwards and say, oh, well, you used this phrase, or you said this, and you said it was this procedure and these symptoms, etc., cause this condition, and I've proven that you are incorrect. They're not going to do that. They don't have time for that. And why? Because it's not a medical examination. And I've said this in other videos, it's not a medical examination. It's an English examination. The examiners, when they send the recordings to Melbourne to mark them, not only are the examiners not medical professionals, they're trained English professionals, but their focus is really to assess your English, not your medical experience, not your medical knowledge, etc. They're not there to do that. They don't have time for that, and they're not qualified to do that either. So I wouldn't necessarily say lie, but you could invent, I suppose lie and invent are very, very similar in this scenario, but you could absolutely, use some scenarios, or, use some procedures, explanations of them that perhaps are not correct. They may or may not be 100% correct, but use them anyway, because like I said, they're assessing your English level. Okay, so don't allow that hesitancy to come in terms of the fact that you're not sure whether it's correct or not. Just go with it. Okay, even in the IELTS speaking examination, again, they always say to you, it's an English examination. Feel free to invent things, say things about your mother, your father, or this relationship, or the fact you've got 5 brothers when you don't have 5 brothers and you don't have any brothers whatsoever. Doesn't matter. You're just there to demonstrate your English ability. You're there to get that grade B that you've been working so hard for. So make sure you demonstrate your English level. Make sure you invent some scenarios, procedures, whatever you want to do. You could be really generic with the kind of advice that you give. So maybe you think, I don't want to lie, I don't want to invent things. Okay, no problem. So just give some generic advice. Don't try to, I see a lot of doctors and nurses, they want to show how experienced they are, how knowledgeable they are about this subject. So they'll go off and they'll use so many, highly advanced, elaborate medical terms, terminology, phrases that are completely outside of what's on the role play card. Okay. Don't do that. Not only are you, for the fact that you could be dealing with a patient or carer, you could be alienating them in the sense that they don't even know what you are saying. So you really need to use that the layman's terms, generic English that they will understand. So you really need to kind of dumb it down compared to what you would say with a colleague at work, a fellow doctor or a specialist, etc. So that is my advice for today. It's there. You're there to display your English ability. So using those words and phrases, you can use generic terms if needs be. You don't need to be super specific and showing off, your ability when it comes to a nurse or a doctor. It's an English exam, not a medical examination. So hopefully this video was helpful to you today. If you want to watch more of our free video lessons, or you want to get more of our free OET materials, make sure you go to swooshenglish.com. If you have any questions whatsoever on today's video, make sure you put them in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video lesson.